In January of 2014, residents of a small and isolated island in the Marshall Islands noticed a battered fishing boat drifting toward the shore. The vessel was barely recognizable. Its hull was bleached by the sun, its edges worn down by salt and time. But the man who emerged from it was even more striking. His hair and beard were tangled into one another. His skin had darkened from constant wind and salt. He struggled to walk and had difficulty speaking. Those who saw him felt as if they were not meeting someone who had been alone for months, but someone who had not seen another human being for years. His name was José Salvador Alvarenga. According to his account, he had been drifting in the ocean for 438 days. The claim quickly echoed around the world. It challenged everything known about human survival at sea. How could a person stay alive in the open ocean for such an unimaginable length of time, without navigation and with almost no equipment? And more importantly, why had he not begun this journey alone? The story began in a small fishing village on Mexico's Pacific coast. José Salvador Alvarenga was an experienced fisherman who had grown up with the sea and spent most of his life on boats. Catching sharks, marlin, and sailfish was routine work for him. The planned trip was no different from many others. A fishing expedition expected to last around 30 hours. They would go out, catch fish, and return. The fisherman José usually worked with could not join this trip. Instead, José set out with a young man he had never worked with before. His name was Ezequiel Cordoba. He had limited experience in fishing, but he was eager. On the morning of November 17th, 2012, the two men left shore in a small motorboat measuring 7 meters in length. They carried fishing equipment, a large ice chest, a portable radio, and a GPS device. There was no sail, no oars, and no anchor on board. They had never needed them before. The first hours passed without trouble. The catch was plentiful. The ice chest quickly began to fill. Only a few hours remained before the trip was supposed to end. Then everything changed. Dark clouds approached from the northeast. The weather deteriorated suddenly. The wind intensified. Waves began to rise. Before long, they found themselves battling waves higher than 5 meters and winds approaching 100 kilometers per hour. They tried to turn the boat back toward shore, but rain and wind reduced visibility to almost nothing. The coast might have been close, but the opposing wind pushed them farther into open sea with every passing second. Then the engine began making strange noises. Shortly after, it stopped completely. They were no longer moving. José remembered the radio. He immediately tried to contact his boss, Willie. The radio battery was only half full. There was no time to waste. When the connection was made, José's voice was panicked. He explained that the engine had failed. Willie told him to stay calm and asked for their coordinates. But the GPS device had been soaked during the storm and no longer worked. They did not know where they were. Willie said the only option was to drop the anchor, but there was no anchor on the boat. At that moment, the seriousness of the situation became clear to everyone. Without coordinates, searching for them would be almost impossible. Still, a distress call was made. Planes and boats began scanning the area, but the severe weather made the search extremely difficult. They were searched for over the course of 2 days. No trace was found. The storm did not subside. Eventually, the search was called off. José and Ezequiel did not know this. They still believed help would arrive, but there was something they did not realize. From that moment on, together with their small boat, they had been left to the mercy of the Pacific Ocean. There was nothing left to hold them in place. Wherever the wind and currents chose to take them, that is where they would drift. And this was the true beginning of a journey with no return. When the storm finally weakened, it left behind a silent but far more dangerous reality. José and Ezekiel were now far from the coast of Mexico. Within just a few days, wind and currents had pushed them hundreds of kilometers into the open ocean. Around them, there was nothing but endless blue in every direction. The horizon line appeared fixed and unchanging. There was no island, no ship, and no sign of life. The inside of the boat had quickly been stripped down. The fish they had caught were thrown back into the sea so they could maneuver. Communication devices no longer worked. What remained was a small knife, a few pieces of rope, an empty ice chest, and an engine that was completely useless. The sun beat down on them with full force. At night, cold and moisture shook their bodies. During the first days, they survived on the small amount of food they had brought with them and on collected rainwater. But these supplies were quickly exhausted. Their sense of time began to blur. Hours turned into days, and days into weeks. They no longer knew exactly how long they had been at sea. At night, they tried to guess direction by looking at the stars. During the day, they focused on only one thing: staying alive. Hunger soon became their greatest problem. José had spent years at sea. He knew how to catch fish with his bare hands and how to trap seabirds. He pulled turtles onto the boat and ate their meat raw or dried it in the sun. Even jellyfish eventually became a source of food. But thirst was far more ruthless than hunger. When it rained, they tried to collect water using anything they could find. When it did not rain, they tried other methods. They knew the deadly effects of drinking seawater. Even so, when thirst became unbearable, they were forced to drink their own urine. At times, they tried to survive by drinking the blood of animals they caught. With each passing day, their bodies grew weaker and their minds became more clouded. To protect themselves from the sun, they flipped the ice chest upside down and crawled beneath it. They spent their days hunched over in a narrow, cramped space. After weeks, this position turned into unbearable pain, but they had no other choice. Their only hope was that a ship or an airplane might notice them. From time to time, they saw planes passing in the distance. They waved their arms and shouted, but the small, unmarked boat was invisible in the vastness of the ocean. As the months passed, the difference between the two men became more pronounced. José was accustomed to harsh sea conditions. His body was more resilient to this kind of life. For Ezekiel, it was different. Raw meat, salty air, and constant sun wore him down both physically and mentally. His stomach began to reject food. Whenever he tried to eat even a small bite, he vomited. Over time, he stopped eating altogether. Ezekiel's condition worsened with each passing day. His speech became incoherent. His eyes stared into emptiness, and he remained silent for long periods. José did everything he could to keep him alive, but in the middle of the ocean without help, there was very little that could be done. Eventually, the inevitable happened. Ezekiel passed away quietly. For months, the two men had shared pain, fear, and hope on the same boat. Now José was alone. He kept his friend's body beside him for days. He spoke to him. He acted as if Ezekiel were still there. This was a defense against loneliness. On the 6th day, he held a small ceremony and released Ezekiel into the sea. The body merged with the waves and quickly disappeared from sight. He was completely alone now. Nights felt longer and days became quieter. At times, he thought about ending his own life, but each time he stopped himself. Giving up would have meant allowing the ocean to take him slowly. Survival was no longer a goal. It had become an instinct. Months later, one day a large cargo ship appeared on the horizon. José forced himself to stand. He waved his arms with all his strength, shouted, and made frantic movements. The ship came closer. Hope was reborn. But after a few minutes, it changed course and moved away. No one had seen him. In that moment, something inside José broke. The rescue he had been waiting for had come, only to pass right by him. The sea grew quiet again. The small boat continued its journey, carried by the currents. As days and months blended together, José was no longer just trying to keep his body alive, but his mind as well. He began tracking time by following the phases of the moon. This helped him stay connected to reality. Still, loneliness grew heavier with each passing day. And yet, this journey was not over. Months later, one morning, José noticed an unusual shape on the horizon. He narrowed his eyes and stared at the same point for a long time. At first, he thought it was an illusion. For days, he had seen nothing but the ocean, and his mind had begun to play tricks on him. But the shape did not disappear. As it drew closer, it became an irregular silhouette. It could be an island. The small boat drifted slowly toward the shore. José struggled to remain standing. He had not slept properly for days. His strength was gone. Still, by holding onto the edge of the boat, he managed to reach land. The moment his feet touched the sand, he lost his balance and collapsed. The fact that he was even able to stand was a miracle. This was a small island belonging to the Marshall Islands, with almost no permanent population. When the local residents saw the unfamiliar boat washed ashore and the man who emerged from it, they were stunned. José had difficulty speaking. He relied on hand gestures and drawings to communicate. Authorities were notified shortly afterward. The mayor's office was contacted, and José was placed on a vessel that would take him to a larger center. When he arrived at the hospital, his condition was serious. His body was severely weakened. He was diagnosed with anemia. His liver had been badly damaged due to parasites. As a result of long-term trauma, he struggled to sleep and developed an intense fear of water. Doctors described his survival as extraordinary. After 11 days of treatment, he recovered enough to return to his country. As his story spread, doubts began to grow. Was it truly possible for a human being to survive in the open ocean for such a long time while drinking almost no fresh water? Some experts argued that severe vitamin deficiencies would have been inevitable. In particular, they claimed that scurvy should have developed. In response, doctors explained that José had mainly consumed seabirds and turtles, which may have provided his body with sufficient vitamin C. Another point of debate was the journey itself. Without navigation, it seemed almost impossible for a small boat leaving Mexico to reach the Marshall Islands. However, oceanographic studies revealed that winds and currents in the Pacific Ocean could theoretically make such a route possible. Under normal conditions, the journey was calculated to take between 18 months and 2 years. José completing this distance in approximately 14 months was unlikely, but not impossible. The controversy did not end there. Months later, the family of Ezequiel Cordoba filed a lawsuit against José. The accusations were serious. It was alleged that José had used his friend's body in order to survive. José firmly denied these claims. The fact that the accusations emerged shortly after the publication of a book about his experience raised suspicion in some circles. To clear his name, José agreed to undergo a lie detector test. Even today, there are those who believe this story and those who remain skeptical. Some see it as a miracle that pushes the limits of human willpower. Others believe that not everything that was told is true. Whatever the truth may be, one thing is certain. The idea of a human being surviving alone in the open ocean for months is chilling on its own. Perhaps the real question is this: if this story is true, how far can a human being really go? And if it is not, why would someone be lost at sea for such a long time? The answers are still hidden in the depths of the ocean.